Imagine you and your friends are planning a protest, but you fear that the local authorities will find out ahead of time and then try to stop you from having that protest. How do you prevent the authorities from discovering what your plans are? Your friends live too far away from each other for you to hold an in-person meeting, and the COVID-19 lockdowns also make such physical meetings illegal. You have to send messages to each other, but you suspect the police are monitoring your internet connections and your phone conversations. So, how do you and your friends communicate privately so that your protest is successful? Find out in this video. In order to send private messages to your friends, you need to master the art of making the meaningful turn into the nonsense, and making the nonsense turn back into the meaningful. No, I'm not talking about philosophy. I'm talking about cryptography. When you encrypt a message, it means that you take a message that looks kind of like this. Hey everyone, let's have a protest in front of Liverpolis Capitol building at noon on Jefferson's birthday. Wear your uniforms and bring your signs. Let's make sure our lawmakers know that we care a lot about this issue. Jonathan. And turn it into a message that looks more like this. 947070D4A. That encrypted message, ciphertext, can be sent over the internet to your friends. If law enforcement were to intercept your message, then they would see the ciphertext, not your actual message. Depending on how complicated your encryption mechanism is, they could try to decrypt it by having their computers do a bunch of guessing, which is also called brute force. But to do so would probably be extremely hard for them, if not practically impossible, since there is an astronomical number of possible ways to decrypt it, with only one of them being correct. So your message is now supposedly safe from being deciphered by the authorities. But how can your friends understand it? Depending on the encryption scheme you are using, each of your friends could need a key sent from you in order to decrypt it, or they could be able to decrypt it with a private key, which they and they alone already have. It gets kind of complicated, but from all indications, it works. Therefore, because you and your friends used the power of encryption, you were able to keep your plans a secret and hold the protest as planned. Well done. Encryption enables multiple parties to communicate without eavesdroppers understanding what they are saying to each other. It is almost like two people speaking to each other in a crowd of other people where only those two people understand the language that the two people are speaking. This makes encryption extremely useful, especially for those who want to outsmart Big Brother. If you are an everyday citizen in a reasonably free country, encryption hopefully is used to keep your financial, medical, and other private information safe from malicious hackers. You could also use encryption for random stuff that you simply believe is nobody else's business, like your ancient photo of 2-year-old you picking your nose. On the other hand, if you are a whistleblower, activist, or journalist living under an authoritarian regime, encryption could literally mean the difference between life and death. Everyone who wants to defend freedom must understand at least a little bit of the importance of encryption and how to use it. Even if your country is relatively free and politically stable for now, you never know when the need for encryption could arise. So here are some examples of how to use encryption in your everyday life. Use HTTPS to encrypt your usernames, passwords, and other info exchanged between you and a website. The S in HTTPS is especially important here. Often, when you are using HTTPS, or Hypertext Transfer Protocol, secure, your browser will let you know by showing a little lock icon near the address bar. One time I was trying to log into a WordPress-based website and realized that I had submitted my username and password into it while not being protected by HTTPS. It was only HTTP. Since I knew a hacker could have been monitoring my internet traffic, I decided to immediately switch to HTTPS and change my password. Use a virtual private network to mask your IP address. A VPN basically means that another computer that is far away from you interacts with the internet on your computer's behalf and sends encrypted data back and forth. It can help make you anonymous online, but beware, many traditional institutions like banks will assume you are a malicious hacker if you try to log in while connected using a VPN. You will also be required to complete more of those annoying CAPTCHAs, since many sites care more about protecting themselves against DDoS attacks, which is a type of hack attack using many computers to overwhelm a website with requests, than about being privacy friendly. Switch to an end-to-end encrypted email provider. I personally use both ProtonMail and Tutanota, and I consider them both to be excellent choices. ProtonMail is based in Switzerland, Tutanota is based in Germany. Both offer a free version and premium features, like custom domains, for those who are willing to pay. Both are encrypted. Both are outside the US, which is a good thing in this context, because LavaBit was a similar encrypted email service that failed because it was a US business in the Edward Snowden era. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the whole story on that, you can look it up, and I can put some informative links in the description below. So if you are looking for an alternative to the Google G Suite in addition to just email, then I would probably go with ProtonMail, since they seem to have a more developed Proton suite that they're in the process of expanding, including Proton VPN, Proton Calendar, Proton Drive, etc. Use an end-to-end encrypted chat app like Signal or Threema. I use both. While Signal requires a phone number to use, Threema does not, which could be a deal breaker for those who value absolute anonymity. While WhatsApp does claim to be end-to-end encrypted, the fact that it is owned by Facebook means that you are letting the fox of privacy violations guard your henhouse of private communication. So in my opinion, why worry about Facebook sneaking into your chat when you can just use one of the other options, like Signal or Threema? If you are configuring a Linux distro, choose the option to encrypt your hard drive. This is one of the more advanced options, but I'll mention it anyway. So when you configure a Linux distro to encrypt your hard drive, this means using 2 passwords every time you log into your computer, but it will make it that much harder for somebody to physically access your data after you shut down your computer. If you can barely handle keeping track of one password, then you could have the password for the encryption of your hard drive and for logging into your computer be the same. But if you can't handle all of that, then just forget about that last part. So speaking of encrypted hard drives, just like how encrypting your own data makes it harder for attackers to access it, the tables can also be turned against you with encryption when the attacker is the one who encrypts your data, like with WannaCry. WannaCry, for those of you who don't know, is a type of ransomware that causes a lot of problems for its victims because it encrypted the data of the computers and demanded a ransom of Bitcoin in exchange for the user supposedly getting their data decrypted or returned to them. Of course, with criminals, you can never really know whether they're telling the truth, since they could theoretically keep demanding more and more money even after the victim sends the original ransom. So, yeah, don't trust crooks. That's a good lesson from that. So, for all its benefits to people who want to remain private, encryption can also stand in the way of governments performing surveillance on the people. Since the state is responsible for enforcing laws against things like terrorism, money laundering, and other shady activities, the mass adoption of encryption makes their job harder. However, when the government takes action to oppose encryption, like requiring backdoors for law enforcement, etc., it often violates the right to privacy of the individuals whose data is no longer private because of that backdoor. And then also, the backdoor has the potential for being acquired by malicious people, like malicious hackers, and so that opens up a whole new world of possibility for bad stuff that could happen to individuals, besides just government abuse in that case. So for those who are more interested in stuff along those lines, check out the story of when the NSA tried to create a hardware backdoor to encryption called the Clipper chip. And so before I wrap up this episode of Outsmart Big Brother, I would like to give a quick shout out to NanoRepublic on ThinkSpot for their questions to me last week regarding several of these encryption-related things. There's still a ton of stuff that I personally need to learn about the details of just how public key cryptography actually is able to work. And we've barely scratched the surface here, but hopefully this video helps you to be able to use encryption more in your own life. And so my challenge to you this week is to find something that you need to encrypt and do it. Let me know in the comments what things you are starting to encrypt. So, also, what topics would you like me to cover in future videos? Please let me know in the comments below. Please consider following and sharing if you like this content, and stay free, everyone.